All right, welcome back to part 2 of the analytical geometry as I promised. Now, we are going to deal with this question 2 from the Free State paper, which was written in June 2025. We are told that in the diagram, coordinate point A, point B, point C, and D, we are given the three coordinates for point A, B, and C. However, we do not have the coordinates for point D, but we are told that these are vertices of a quadrilateral, having line AD being parallel to line BC. So we're being told that point A, B, C, D are vertices, and this is A, B, C, D is a quadrilateral. It's a shape with 4 sides, and we are also told that line AD is parallel to line BC. You can see it's also drawn, right? Now we're told that BA produced as an x-intercept. So this line BA, it has got an x-intercept at point E, and BD and AC intersect at M. Line BD and AC, they meet at point M. And then we're told N has got coordinates T and O. So we do not know the x coordinate, but we know that y is equal to 0. And it is a point on line AD. We are told that this point N is a line on, it's a point on line AD. Now, let's see the question. First question, it now says, calculate the gradient of line BC. So we must calculate this gradient. So we now say gradient of line BC is equal to our y at point C is -3 minus our y at point B, which is 5, all over our x at point C is 0 minus our x at point B is 6, which is equal to -3 -5 gives us -8, all over 0 minus 6, it's -6. Negative divided by negative, it provides us with a positive. Now, we have a common factor, which is 2. 2 into 8, that's 4, over 2 into 6, that's 3. So we can conclude that, therefore, the gradient for line BC is equal to 4 over 3. And we have got our 2 marks. We move on to question 2.2. Now they say, determine the equation of BC. We must determine the equation of this line BC. So here they didn't tell me in which form should I put the equation. So I go for the easiest method. So this is 2.1. This is 2.2. Now I'm going to use the method of saying y minus y1 is equal to gradient multiplied by x minus x1. It's easiest, it takes me straight to the answer. So now I say y minus, I can take any y coordinate. So I'm going to choose what? I'm going to choose point C. So the y coordinate at point C is -3. So I say open bracket -3 is equal to, M is the gradient. I just found that 4 over 3 is the gradient for line BC. Open bracket x minus, my x at point C is 0. So where you fetch the y, that's where you fetch your point x. All right. Now that I've done this, on the next stage, now I say negative times negative, it gives me a positive. So I've got y plus 3 is equal to x minus 0, it's what? It's x. So now I have to say 4 over 3 multiplied by x, which gives me 4 over 3x, right? Now, what should I do? I should now translate this particular 3. So when I translate the particular 3, now I'm going to have y is equals to 4 over 3x. It was a positive 3, now I've got a -3. And this is the equation of line BC. 3 marks, done. Now we go to 2.3. Determine the value of t. Where is t? Remember, t, we were told that it's a point on what? Line AD, right? So here is where your theory is very important. From the previous video, I told you and I taught you about the types of gradients that we have. 4 types of gradients: gradients of parallel lines, gradients of perpendicular lines, gradients of vertical line, and gradients of a horizontal line. If you want to know about that, please refer to the video before this one, right? So what do we know about gradients? What are we going to use to determine the value of t? we are going to use the fact that line BC, we were told earlier on that it is parallel to line AD. And we know that when you have got what? Oh, sorry. This is where our equation from the previous question is, right? So now we know that gradients of parallel lines are equal, meaning to say that the gradient of line on question 2.3, I'm saying the gradient of line BC is equal to the gradient of line AD. Why? Because we were told that AD is parallel to line BC, right? So what is the gradient of line BC? The gradient of line BC is equals to 4 over 3. So we now say 4 over 3 here is equal to, we are now going to use the gradient formula. What does the gradient formula for line AD mean? We are now going to say that we've got point A and point N here on line AD. So it becomes YN minus YA all over XN minus XA, right? So when we've got that, now we say 4 over 3. So here it would be gradient of line AN. So now the gradient is 4 over 3. We don't have to calculate for that. Point Y at our Y coordinate at point N is 0. So we say 0 minus our Y at point A is what? 2. So 0 minus 2 all over. Our X at point N is T. So we write our T here minus our X at point A is negative 2. So inside the brackets, negative 2. When I do this now, I've got 0 minus 2, which gives me a negative 2 all over. Negative times negative, it gives me a positive. So I've got T plus 2 there, right? Now that I've done that, what do I do next? Now I say 4 over 3 here, right? 4 over 3 here is equal to negative 2 all over T plus 2. So now I need to get rid of what? I need to get rid of the denominator. I need to get rid of the denominator. So now in order for me to get rid of the denominator, I come here and I multiply by T plus 2. I multiply there by T plus 2. Right? So this T plus 2 cancels out with that T plus 2. I also need to get rid of this 3. So I multiply by 3 this side. I multiply by 3 that side. Now, on this side, they cancel out. Now, I say 4 multiplied by T, it gives me 4T. 4 multiplied by 2, it gives me 8. Which is equal to negative 2 multiplied by 3, which gives us negative 6. Right? Now I'm going to transpose this. Now I've got 4T is equals to negative 6. The positive 8 becomes a negative 8. And negative 6, negative 8 is equals to negative 14. So I've got 4T, which is equals to negative 14. But we're looking for T, so we divide by the coefficient 4. Divide by the coefficient 4. 4 into 4, that's 1. So therefore, our T is equal to. Now we've got negative 14 over 4. But there is a common factor for what? There is a common factor for negative 14 and positive 4. And the common factor is 2. So if we divide negative divided by positive, it's a negative. And 14 divided by 2, we get 7 over 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2. So the value of T is equals to negative 7 over 2. We are done. We could have used an alternative method, but whereby we could have, since we've got the gradient, we could have found the equation of line AD, and then after finding the equation of line AD here, then we would substitute this point 0 and find x, right? It's an alternative method. All right, so let's move on. How many marks were contained here for determining the value of T? 2 marks, 2 free marks. Now let's go to 2.4. Now they say determine the coordinates of D. Where is D? This point D here. Remember, we're given X and Y. If ABCD is a parallelogram, we're being told that ABCD is a parallelogram. So what do we know? We know that from our grade 10 when we did our quadrilaterals, when you've got a when you've got a parallelogram, this point M here is a midpoint, right? So this midpoint is for line BD. It's also a midpoint for line AC, right? So the coordinates here, they are common. So what am I going to do? I'm going to find the midpoint using point A and point C, because it has got both of these points, they've got coordinates. When I'm done doing that, then I will now use line BD and the coordinates of point B and the coordinates of point M to find the coordinates of D. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to erase here such that I can perform my calculations underneath, right? So now I'm saying midpoint of what? Line AC. So I come here and I say midpoint line AC is equal to XA plus XC divided by 2, and then the YA plus YC divided by 2, right? Now midpoint AC is equal to, my X at point A is -2 plus my X at point C is 0 divided by 2, and then my Y at point A is 2 plus my Y at point C is -3, so I place it inside the brackets. Then I've got, right? So when I continue now, I say -2 plus 0, that's a -2 divided by 2, and then here positive times negative, it's a negative, and 2 minus 3 is -1, so I've got -1 here over 2, like that. Now this positive divided by negative, it's a negative, so now we've got a -2 divided by 2, that's 1, so we've got a -1, and this one, it doesn't need anything else, it's now a -half. So we have found that the coordinates for the midpoint AC, we say therefore the coordinates of midpoint AC are these. X is -1, Y is -half. But we are not yet done. Now we are going to take these coordinates. To find X, what do I go and do? Now I take this -1, I say -1 is equal to, now I take X at point B and I say my X is 6 plus my X at point D is X all over 2. Now I need to get rid of this denominator, so I multiply by 2 this side, I multiply by 2 that side. 2 into 2, that they cancel out. Positive and negative, it gives me a negative. So I've got -2 here, which is equals to 6 plus X. I transpose the 6 because it's a like term. It becomes -2, -6 is equals to X. -2, -6 is equals to -8. So therefore my X is equals to -8. And just like that, I've calculated for my coordinate X. Now we must define coordinate Y. And when I want Y, I take the Y from the midpoint, which is -half. So I write -half here is equal to, my Y coordinate at point B is 5. So I say 5 plus, here my Y is Y. The Y coordinate is Y divided by 2. I need to get rid of this denominator, I need to get rid of this denominator. So let me start with this one. I multiply by 2 this side, I must multiply by 2 that side because it's an equation. So this side, they cancel out. Got rid of that one. Now I must get rid of this 2. So I'm going to write multiply by 2 this side and multiply by 2 that side. Now this cancels out that. Now I've got a positive multiplied by negative, which gives me a negative sign. 2 times 1 is equals to 2. And here now I say 2 multiplied by 5, it is equals to 10, plus 2 multiplied by Y, that is 2Y. Now I transpose the 10, it becomes a -10, right? So I've got -2 and -10, which is equal to 2Y. -2 and -10 is equals to -12. So I divide by 2 here, I divide by 2 there. Therefore, I can conclude that my Y is equals to -12, negative divided by positive, it's a negative sign. -12 divided by 2 is 6. You can just put it in on your calculator like this, they need to give you -6. Remember, they said I must determine what? The coordinates of point D. I found X is and y is also negative. So now I write therefore, what do I write underneath? I now write therefore the coordinates of point D are my x is negative 8 and my y is negative 6. I have now answered them in the form that they asked, right? So I'm done. Now let's go to the last question, right? The last question says determine the equation of the perpendicular bisector. This question is very tricky. Of AD. Why? Here there is nothing that you can see, but there is something here according to the description. It now depends on how well your theory is, right? Now, let me take you step by step. They say determine the equation, right? So we must determine the equation of a line of the perpendicular bisector. Perpendicular. Now here, the word perpendicular, what does it mean? We know number one, gradients of a perpendicular are what? Gradient 1 multiplied by gradient 2 is equals to -1. So the product of perpendicular lines gives us a product of -1. Now that's number one. That's what we know. Number two, the perpendicular bisector. Remember, bi means two. Bi means two. Now, bisector, remember, bisect means to divide into two equal parts. So we're saying that we have got this line AD here, and this line AD is divided into two equal parts. At which point do we get something that bisects? At a midpoint. So in other words, the midpoint happens to be the line that now is perpendicular to what? It is perpendicular to line AD, right? So it leaves this side be equal to that side, and here there will be 90 degrees. That's what is being said, right? So what do we do? This is why they required us to find the coordinates of point D. Why? We are going to use these coordinates of point D to find the midpoint of this line AD. Please go to my previous video where I gave you hints about what happens in analytical geometry in terms of their questions, right? Go and watch the previous video. I explained everything. I'm not going to do tautology. So here, okay, tautology means I'm not going to repeat myself. Just go to the previous video. You will find the tips and tricks. So my point D is -8 and -6. So this is what I'm going to do. Now, it has got 4 marks. These marks are free to someone who understands theory. If you do not understand theory, I'm telling you, those marks are not free. So now we say midpoint of line AD is equal to the x at point A is -2 plus the x at point D, which is -8, divided by 2. The y at point A is 2 plus the y at point D is -6 divided by 2. Right? Now, here, positive times negative, it's a negative. -2, -8 gives us -10 divided by 2. Positive, negative, it's a -2 minus 6, that's -4 divided by 2. Negative divided by positive, that's a -10 divided by 2, that's 5. Negative divided by positive, that's a -4 divided by 2, that's 2. So we have found that the midpoint, the coordinates of the midpoint of line AD are the x is -5, the y is -2. Now, what do we do? Now, oh Jesus Christ, I did the wrong. No, I didn't do the wrong thing. I've got the midpoint of line AD, right? But in order for me to determine the equation, right, remember, what do we need? Remember, we're told earlier on that line AD is, line AD is parallel to line BC, right? So what do we need? Remember, I said that when you've got perpendicular lines, we say gradient of line 1 multiplied by gradient of line 2, they give us a product of -1. So the gradient in this case of line AD, right, it's going to multiply with the gradient of the perpendicular line. So you write it like this. We do not know, we know that the midpoint is -5 and -2, but we were not given the coordinate for the midpoint. So you use this symbol for the perpendicular lines. Is equal to -1. So we already know the gradient of line AD. Earlier on we said the gradient of line BC was 4/3, so which means that the gradient of line AD is 4/3. Remember we said these are parallel lines and they've got equal gradients. So now I come in and I say 4/3 multiplied by the gradient of perpendicular lines like that, which is equal to -1. Now what am I doing? I'm trying to find the gradient of this midpoint, right? So what do I do next? When I want to get rid of this, I can come here and multiply by 3/4. And since I multiply by 3/4 here, I must also multiply by 3/4 on the other side. Now this 4 cancels out that 4. This 3 cancels out this 3. Now observe, now I can say therefore the gradient of a perpendicular line is equal to negative multiplied by positive, that's a negative. 1 times 3, that's 3/4. So I found that the gradient is -3/4, right? Remember, why am I finding the gradient? Because when I want to determine the equation, the first thing that I need is a gradient. That is why I calculated for the gradient. I already have got it. The second thing which I need is any point which has got coordinates. I already have got the coordinates of the midpoint. So now I'm going to use y minus y1 is equals to m open bracket x minus x1. This is my favorite equation. It takes you straight to the answer. Of course, you can use y is equals to mx plus c, but this gives you stop and go. You must first define c, then eventually determine the equation. And some people, they stop at finding c. That's why I don't prefer it. Now, I now write y minus at y1, my y is -2, which is equals to, the gradient is what? I just found that my gradient is -3/4, open bracket x minus, my x coordinate is -5, right? Close bracket. Negative times negative, that's a positive. So I've got y plus 2, which is equals to, now, negative times negative, it's a positive. So I've got -3/4, open bracket x plus 5, close the bracket. Y plus 2 here repeats, and negative times positive, it's a negative 3/4x, and here negative times positive, it's a -3/5, that's 15/4. Now I'm going to transpose this 2, right? So it becomes a -2. So now I say y is equals to -3/4x minus 15/4. When I transpose the -2, I must convert it to become a what? An improper fraction, right? And for this one, it's -2/1. For it, in order for it to become a denominator of 4, I must multiply by the conjugate what? 2. So I say multiply by 2/2. Now I say y is equal to, right, is equal to what? -3/4x. Then I still have got -15/4. Negative times positive, that's a -2 times 2, that's 4 over, wait a minute, I multiplied by the wrong number. Sorry for that. I want a 4. So I must multiply by 4/4, not 2, because I will get a 2 here. So 4 by 2, that's a -8 there, and 4 by 1, that's 4. Now, when I say -15 and -8, it gives me -23. So I can conclude that, therefore, my y is equal to -3/4x minus 23/4. This is the equation of the perpendicular bisector. So this equation here, this straight line here, its equation is that one. All right. So, as promised, I've delivered part 2 of the Free State paper, which was written in June 2025. If you found this video, very helpful, please do consider subscribing, like, comment, and share. The next video which I'm going to deal with trigonometry of grade 12, a past exam paper. So, You don't want to miss that. We will be dealing with double angles, trig identities. So please do join us. Till we meet next time, cheers.